How many times have you had an important decision to make, but it takes you hours to even land on a decision? That's because you're an overthinker. Let's stop that now. I'm going to share with you 5 exercises you can do so that you can stop ruminating on your past, future, or even your present. Before we get started, I want to say, hey, trauma-free tribe. I am Sia, the transparent therapist, coaching you to stress less and connect more. If you are not currently a part of the trauma-free tribe, go ahead and click subscribe and let's get into these 5 exercises. Now, in order for you to stop overthinking, I'm going to say this time and time again, we have to be in a space of awareness. We don't know that we're overthinking until we know we're overthinking, and most times it's too late. In order for us to stop overthinking, we have to be very aware of our thoughts, our rumination. How many times have you thought about this said ideal? How many times have you thought about this said decision? Once we're more in a space of acclimating ourselves into thought recognition or even thought awareness, we can then take more control over our thoughts. The second exercise I would love for everyone to do is something called thought diffusion. Now, the sole purpose of thought diffusion is to recognize that your thoughts are simply just thoughts. They're not action-based decisions you have to make right away. They're just words connected to a thought. So in diffusion, what you want to do is recognize the thought that you're having. Maybe the thought is, I'm a failure. Now that you know it's a thought, what you'll do now is reword it. Well, I might think I'm a failure, but I'm just noticing that I'm having a thought about being a failure. Do you see the difference there? One is declaring you're a failure. The other is just noticing you're having a thought about being a failure. Now, in thought diffusion, you can do some wordplay because, again, the whole goal here is just to recognize that the thoughts you're having, maybe it's a situation from the past, maybe it's an important decision, are just thoughts and words stringed together. The reason why we want to separate the thought just being a word than a thought that has to be a decision is because they're two different things. Now, let's say you have a thought, we'll stick with the same thing, I'm a failure. We can play with the words. So maybe you say it really fast, I'm a failure. Maybe you say it really slow, I'm a failure. Maybe you sing it, I'm a failure. Obviously, I'm a therapist, not a singer. So yeah, I get it, right? The reason why we're doing this is, again, we're telling the brain, hey, these words don't have to make me so anxious because they're just words. And we're attributing power to it. The thoughts about moving across the country, the thought about taking another job, yes, they have some power to it. But in that very moment, you're not in the new job, you're not in a new space. So let's just recognize thoughts for what it is, just words. Now, if you are enjoying these exercises right now, I want you to stop, hit subscribe, hit the like button, because I have so many more videos on this channel that help people like you stress less and connect more with their family, their friends, their loved ones, with God. And this is so important as you are healing on this journey. Now, number 3 is one of my ultimate favorites. It's scheduling a time for rumination. If you're anything like me, maybe you have really big decisions you have to make in your workplace or in your leadership teams or in your entrepreneurial goals. And it is okay to ruminate, but we want to do it in a controlled space. So ruminating in a set time or at a set time helps. Why? Because it's giving you control over what you're doing and thinking. This is much like the worry timer that I might have talked about in another video, where yes, you might worry or you're ruminating and you're overthinking. But when we set some limits, parameters, and boundaries around it, it makes that rumination feel so much more sustainable. So perhaps you are, again, going to move across the country or state, and you're not sure this is the right time to do it. Well, what you can do is say, hey, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes and maybe 10 minutes every single day. I'm just going to dedicate that time to ruminate on this thing. Because when we overthink, it's usually intrusive, right? It's coming at the most inopportune time. Maybe we have another task that we need to complete, but we're not able to complete it because we're just thinking about all the things we have to complete or do in order to establish that said task or the thing we're overthinking. But now if we give some time to it to say, hey, we're only going to do it, and at the end of this timer, or we're only going to think about this, and at the end of this timer, I'm not going to think about it anymore, it helps because now you're in control over those intrusive thoughts. Because maybe when you're driving, you don't want to think about it. But we know at 5 p.m. tomorrow and every day thereafter, we're going to think about this thing until we come to a decision. What you'll find is the more you practice scheduling a time to ruminate, the less time you'll need to ruminate, and you'll be able to come to a decision quickly. Number 4, one of the exercises, which is really simple, is just realizing that your rumination is very different from a decision. Oftentimes we'll think that our rumination is how we're going to solve the problem, but we're not solving the problem. We're just ruminating. We're just giving ourselves all these possibilities. When you're actually problem solving, you have a definite answer and you stick to it. So when you're able to say, hey, I'm actually overthinking, but I'm not coming to a solution, and you're separating the two, it helps. It gives your brain some space to settle into ideals rather than solution. And so 3 and 4 kind of play into each other. When you're setting that time to ruminate, you know that, hey, in this time I can come up with solutions, but anytime after that, I'm not doing it. And then number 4 basically says, like, well, if I'm ruminating, I'm not really making a solution. And so I'm identifying that ruminating and solution-oriented steps are 2 different things. We'll oftentimes tell ourselves that, hey, we have to think about this thing really hard, really long, because that's the only way we're going to come up with a solution, but that's not true. We know we can perseverate over something for years, months, minutes, and not come to a solution. So separating the 2 and the practice of recognizing that you're separating the 2 helps. Now, number 5. This is something that people don't do often, but I recommend to everyone, even if it's something you're not overthinking. Let's write it down. You have thousands of thoughts a day. Hundreds of thousands of thoughts a day at that. And you're expecting your brain to hold all this information. No wonder your brain keeps going back to it to try to flesh it out. Now, when we put things down on paper, instead of expecting our brain to just be the main memory cell for all the information we take in, it gives that thought that you're overthinking a space to live. So we know that when we write it down, we can always just come back to this paper and jot something else down rather than thinking over and over and over again. Even if it's a special decision, or maybe it's something in the past. And maybe it's an argument you might have had with your friend and you're like, oh, am I overthinking this? Get a piece of paper, write it down, and let it go. When you write it down, you also are telling your amygdala, like, hey, you are doing something with this information. And so now we can tell our brains to kind of calm down versus the information just being boggled and ping pong back and forth in your brain. It doesn't know what it's doing. But now that you're doing something active with that thought, it helps. Now, I want to give you guys a bonus. So this would be number 6. You have to be very daring to do this. But sometimes you can just distance yourself from the problem or thought that you're having. And what do I mean? Talk to yourself about it. Talk to yourself in third person. So again, let's say I'm moving across the country and I'm just thinking to myself all the time about it. Well, hey, maybe I might say, Sia, you're going to move across the country? What do you think that'll be like for you? You see how it sounds kind of crazy? But trust me, you're not crazy when you do this. There are actually several studies that were conducted by philosophers and scientists. And I don't want to misquote the university, but they were conducted. And what they found is that people who talk to themselves in third person in a parameter-like way, all right, are a little bit more wise or wiser than others. So take that time, talk to yourself about the problem, even if you're overthinking it, externalize yourself, say say hey, all right? And now talk to yourself about the problem, because you'll probably unlock some portions of your brain that you haven't tapped into if you were just thinking in your head about it. Now, if you found any of this or all of it helpful, I want you to look into the description box and download that Beat the Anxiety worksheet, because oftentimes we're overthinking because we're just anxious. In this worksheet, you're going to find some prompts that you can go through that's going to help you identify when you're in a state of anxiety. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, make sure you share it, like, and subscribe, because you know you want to be a part of the trauma-free tribe. Okay? Walk good, keep the vibes high, and I will see you in the next video, and click the next video. Bye.